What world do we live in where you beat me to work? What is it, Monday? It's Monday. It's Nativity Day.
It is.
Oh, are you excited?
Yeah, I'm going as an angel.
A goat. All right, let's have a wander around. We'll see what's what. I don't know, chat some rubbish in the meantime.
That's good to me.
Get for it.
We're back.
We are on a Monday.
Yes.
Top of the mountain. It's all downhill from here.
Soon be Christmas.
Yeah, because last Christmas Day night at 11 o'clock, I had a phone call off someone because their car was making a noise.
Mate.
So don't do that this year.
I'm going to do that this year.
Yeah, it's all right. I like chatting to you.
That's all right then.
Chat nonsense. Not much has happened with M3. Matt's putting his head back on this week. Jordan's put a new tyre on his Mini. George picked up his white Avant. That is on Auto Trader. So if anyone's interested in a really, really nice RS6 Avant, let me know. He's just spent a lot of money getting that up together. And then once it's sold, he can spend all his money on a saloon. So it's all good fun.
Link into that.
Yeah. Check out the description below.
There we go.
M5 comp, spark plugs, air filter, replaced the blown coolant tank. We diagnosed a motor problem for the exhaust flaps, and we've just put a centre silencer section on it, and I might run it on dyno. Well, I will run it on dyno. So yeah, M5, we get that finished and back to James this week. So it does sound pretty Larry.
I do like these.
Yeah, it's baller.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a split coolant tank. We're going to do, or we've done plugs, air filters. New motors turned up today for the exhaust.
These are the ones that you could make.
Ball,
Drive,
yeah.
Very nice.
This is Chris and Auto Alex.
Right.
So this is their car.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this needs a service and a few bits and pieces. So Chris came down last week, and we went for a drive in it to understand one of the problems he was having, but it's not a problem really. It's just what they do, and the more you drive them, the better they get.
So is this a project car for those guys?
I think so. I think he's had it a while, so I think he just wants to get it buttoned up and get it sold. But it's bloody clean for the mileage it's done. It's done over 100,000 miles.
Has it?
Yeah.
It looks in good nick.
Yeah. So that's okay. This is Brad's. We've just put a gearbox in it, so that's all fixed, ready to go back. That one is, oh God, I didn't drink at all at the weekend. That is having wheel alignment, service, and a new key. Wait for the lorry to go. Which one's the auction car? That's waiting for a roof pump. That's the auction car. So guy bought it, Louis his name is, lovely chap, bought it from auction, and he just wants us to do fluids and fix a coolant tank, because that coolant tank bloody went as well.
Okay.
So that's okay. This is John's, and he's swapping it out for a new one. So we've just had it back, taken some of the enhancements we've done off it, and he's coming to get that today, so that's okay.
Is that wrapped or is that a special?
No, factory colour.
Wow.
Factory colour, bruv. Looks like someone painted it gloss and then rubbed it with like wet and dry. Yeah, not sure, don't know. I put up a really sort of, what's the word? Controversial post at the weekend saying the only Porsche I'd buy is a Cayman GT4.
I did see that.
Yeah. I think it went down all right. Either that or the no comments is people going, what a dick. So this one's roof pump at a service. So we fixed the roof. It stopped working, we fixed the roof, and we just got to finish servicing now, and then that can go back.
Roof issues common on these?
Not common. But normally it's one of two things when it happens. It's either the pump or the rear window regulator.
Yeah.
The pump goes because it lives under the fuel tank, and the casings they live in get wet, and then they can't breathe the moist air out, so they just rot. And then the regulators, the water runs down the regulator, sits on the switches, and they're Hall effect switches, and you you can't do anything with them, you can't replace them. We've tried, and you have to put a regulator on it, because if a roof control module doesn't know where the rear window is, it just goes, nope, not for you.
Right.
And then tells you to do one. Yeah. Coal trickles mellow yellow.
Look at that. Now that's something different.
So this is John's from Podium, and we've got Tarek's brake kit to go on it and a load of suspension stuff. And however much I really don't like Hondas, I really like that.
These are cool. They just are.
How much are these now? Like, how much would that be?
I think these have gone up to silly money again. We'll need to check with the Honda expert inside. Captain
Expert.
Reality.
Yeah, expert. X is a has-been and spurt is a drip under pressure. Ronnie's is, we're just waiting for brakes to turn up. We'll put some brakes on it. And then Mr. Armstrong's, I'm pretty sure that's just about ready to go. Then the red Skoda's on the dyno. We're just waiting for an injector loom to turn up. What else is going on?
Go inside.
Merch.
Ah, hang on.
Hit the web shop, bruv.
There we go. Feel the quality.
Stop feeling me
I
up.
just wanted to touch you.
Yeah. Touch me in the morning. All my bike kit is back from Spain. Ryan from Dark Side has sent me some presents. Should we open it up? Have a look. I haven't even opened it up yet.
Christmas.
Yeah, he's a good lad. He's just like, I've sent you a load of stuff. Because obviously he knows what we're trying to do with the Noble.
Yep.
Bloody hell, they're good at packaging stuff, aren't they? Right, so we have got, I've got a bottom end.
This Golf R?
Yeah, with an oil cooler. So it's got all the oil cooler plate already on it, look.
Nice.
So that's quite cool.
Yep. Do it.
So yeah, crank. So I'm going to put big rods and pistons in it.
Yep.
So I think this must be one off their race car. Right, so we've got a cylinder head, a complete cylinder head. Fancy inlet manifold.
Ooh.
That is fancy inlet manifold, isn't it? Cool. He's a good one. Throttle body. Q5F, loads of bolts, brackets. That's what I want. So that's their trick gearbox. So that's a
DQ
250
yeah.
with one of their diffs in, one of their race car diffs in. Bloody hell, boy's done good. Hey, bottom girdle, oil pump, loads of bits and pieces.
Yeah. Aladdin's cave of goodies.
Cams, sump pan, yeah. So pretty much a complete engine and a complete gearbox. So thank you to Ryan and the boys at Dark Side. And if you're bored at work, jump on Instagram, give them a follow, and take the piss out of the fact he likes diesels. I don't know, one day you'll wake up and realise petrol's the future. Hey? No such thing as diesel motorbikes being raced, is there? So they can't be cool, diesels. So the Mazda's had a shock absorber on it. So Matt is just erasing all the fault codes. We've had all the bits and pieces turn up for the McLaren engine now, so we're just finishing off putting making sure it's timed up, because we've obviously made some adjustments. Put the covers on, and then we're going to have a play with the turbos, because I think he's going to put a different set of turbos on it.
Morning. Nice. Hello.
The Skyline today or tomorrow morning needs sealing up, as in the inlet ports and the fuel tank, because that's going to Podium tomorrow to get ice blasted, and we're going down Wednesday to do the film, so that'll be cool. The engine's about to go back in the Skoda. We
talk about the Skoda, or is that still?
Yeah, let's leave it a little bit.
Okay.
The V10 Lambo, we're waiting for the crate to arrive. That is done, ready to go back. That's the video we done, or the video we put out Friday. Yeah. So we're just waiting for the crate. We can box it up and then send that back to Dan. And next on the shelf,
Not an elf.
elf on a shelf. Move out of the way. Is a 840T, which is a 720S engine.
Ah.
So block stripped and cleaned, liners are out and cleaned. So new liner O-rings to go in, press the liners in, do ring gaps. He's got a crank cleaned somewhere. and then literally stud kit. The main kit, the main studs are going in, the head studs will go with it because we're not putting heads on it, it's just a bottom end build. So then that can go. But
be good to follow this one.
yeah, it'd be cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll try and get this, try and get bits and pieces. I might have to iPhone build this one.
Okay.
Just on the run up to Christmas. Christmas! Yeah, so that to get finished. So then the Murcielago to get finished.
Yeah.
Then the TTRS engine to get finished.
It never ends.
No, engine's everywhere in a minute. So it's all good.
Cool.
Yeah. So we've put together a couple of engine packages for a few people to ship out. So our head studs, rods and pistons, dart and liners, and even a set of torque plates one customer's ordered. So they're going to Dubai. So whether we just offer support for that build or whether we go out and build it is up to them. But yeah, it's quite cool. So these are the Italian RP rods and pistons. So yeah, very nice. They are very nice, to be fair. So it's just a case of they are lovely. So getting balanced,
yeah,
sort of set and ready, and then we can put the bottom end together then. But like even the pins are coated.
It's a proper job.
Yeah, it's some good work. Some good work.
So I think we're pretty much caught up there.
We are. That is a catch up. Not much else going on. A load of questions. How do you allow for that offset tool when using the torque wrench? I had a couple of people message me about this. So we were talking about this Ely.
Yep.
And a few people sent me a few different bits and pieces where they were saying you should have it at 90 degrees like this.
Yep.
So I was using it. So you should have it at 90 degrees like that, whereas I was using it straight on.
Yep.
What I didn't really say in a video was I've basically got a sheet, so I know that how much extra or less force I need to use with these. So basically what I did was when the calibration guy was round, I sat there and for 30 Newton meters of a force applied at the nut, I know how much force is applied here. And I just worked it out that way. The reason I did that and I didn't get too tied up in the 90 degree thing is if you go back and watch the video, I can't get the spanner in and my torque wrench in at 90 degrees, which is why I've always sort of done it straight. But I've literally got a sheet that I'd gone down and in 10 Newton meter increments at the bolt head how much force it took on my torque wrench to do it. So that's how I kind of do that. Remember, I'm not torquing it, I'm using max permissible torque, so I'm stretching the bolt. So that's the value I'm looking at, and I'm trying not to go beyond the torque threshold. So it's the stretch I'm interested in, not the torque.
Yeah.
But we know how to roll the torque off, or I know what the difference is between those 2 points. Where did you get the sealant gun from? I take it you mean this one. And I got it from a company called Xpel. We buy all our sealants from them, except the black sealant, which I buy from Volkswagen, which is the D172. Hang on. 176501, which is the black silicon. But that I get from a company called Xpel, which is TCHSIL. And I've got obviously a big gun, I've got electric gun, and then I've got that plastic one for doing the little tubes as well. That was from GTI Mike. Stephen Lee said, great video, do you balance the crank or each piston rings rod assembly? Right, so to balance a crank, first off you start by balancing the reciprocating and the rotating mass. So we have done this, but it's going to be a bit ropey. And then your crankshaft is like that. Yeah?
Yep.
So at some imaginary point, it turns from being a rotating mass to a reciprocating mass. Yeah. So what we do is we measure our pistons and we balance our pistons, our pins. So you've obviously got your piston rings, your piston, your pins, and your circlips, and we measure those. Then we measure our rod, and we have done this on the rod measurer, on the rod weigher, the Dealy tool. So essentially, that's how you weigh a rod. So, you know, the rod's total weight, and then you basically measure the big end to the small end.
Yeah.
And so what we would do is the company who balance our cranks, because we don't balance them in house, we would give them the weight. We fill a sheet out and we give them the rate of the piston, the pins, the rings, the clips, the circlips, the total rod weight, and then the rod weight as I've measured it there. And then what they do is they put all that information into a computer program, and that tells them how much bob weight, it's called bob weight, how much bob weight they need to bolt to the crank. And what they essentially do is, on the big ends, they bolt weights to the crank.
Okay.
Right? So then you've essentially got the rotating mass bolted to the crank. Then you'd run your pulleys and your flywheel, or your pulley and your flywheel, and you balance it. There's a couple of things you've got to be careful of. Is one, the V10 balance. The V10 pulley's already balanced. That's how it's done on a V10. On a manual or an Artronic, it's a single mass flywheel, so you can balance it quite easily. What becomes difficult is when you do a Hurricane, a Gen 2 R8, or a later R8 that's got a DCT gearbox. It's got a dual mass, so it floats. So you never get an accurate. It's hard to balance a dual mass.
Yeah.
So what we normally do there is the company we use to balance our stuff. They've got a locking tool, so they essentially lock the flywheel. So then at least you can balance it out. You're not necessarily balancing the flywheel, but at least you've got a stable mass then, because you check the flywheel first as well. So balancing's an art on its own. We don't do it in house. We pay a company to do it. We just give them all the information, all the measurements, all the weights. But essentially, we would balance. So I would balance all of these. We have shown it before in another video where first of all I juggle everything around to get the heaviest pin with the lightest piston.
Yeah.
And then we would machine the pistons to get them all the same, and we go to like 0.1 of a gram. Same with the rods. We try to get total mass the same, and we try to get the small end and the big end weight the same. So you're trying to get it as perfect as you can, and that's the game. The game is chase it, trying to make your engine as perfect as you can. And I've never built a perfect one yet.
There we go.
That's it. Any engine builder tells you built a perfect engine is full of shit. Because there's always something you can do better. There's always something you want to do better. Like even taking out, casting marks inside blocks and stress relieving blocks. There's always something you sit there and go, I could do that. I could do that in the next one. I could do that in the next one.
But that's what keeps you on top of your game.
Yeah.
That's what keeps pushing you.
Yeah. James Crawford. Ricky, what would the finishing torque be on the bottom main end bolts? And what effect does that have on a breakaway torque compared to when they are torqued to 20 Newton meters? Would be interested to see. The torque on the bottom end bolts, if it's a manufacturer stretch bolt, then they give the torque. So for example, on like a V10, I think they're like 40 Newton meters, the inners, and then like 2 lots of 90 degrees. The studs are just set to a set torque. So you'd normally go on what the manufacturers say. Your bearing clearance and your line honing, if you've got a torque plate on, everything's done with it in its stressed position. So your clearances are always stable. Like Formula 1 go to another level and they hot hone. So the block is at operating temperature I wouldn't even limit that to Formula 1. It would be drag racing, that sort of thing. But that's another level where when you hone the block, it's done with the block at operating temperature.
Well.
So it's called hot honing. The torque, once your bearing clearances are set and everything's right, when we knocked them down to like 40 Newton meters the other day, I knocked them down to 40 and 20 on the V10, and standard they're 50 and 30, so we weren't far off. Essentially, the tighter you pull the mains down, the harder it is to turn the engine over, because you're putting more compression through the bearings. But breakaway torque for me is it is something we note, but it's not a measure. It's not something where you can only ever have it too tight. If it's too loose, if it was, say, like breakaway torque was like 4, I wouldn't sit there and go, oh yeah, my ring gaps are too big, or my bearing clearances are too big. For me, it's a measure of how tight the engine is rather than how loose it is, and it's a feel thing, if that makes sense. So it's like when you screw a bolt in or you screw a stud in to a head and it goes tight halfway down, it's a feel thing. You've got to take it out and then obviously tap the thread. So breakaway torque for me is a feel. I know from experience what I should expect on a rotating bottom end with OEM liners, with this piston pack, with these rod bearings. I just kind of got a feel. So for me, it's more a it's more a feel.
It's a feel. It's the experience, isn't it? That you
yeah. Like to give you an example, I did when we did the 504 V8 Mercedes engine, we were waiting on the main bolts to come back or to come into stock. So I dry built it and then wet built it with the old bolts in, knowing I would put the new bolts in to torque them down and do everything. And basically what had happened is when we'd sent it away for machining, the bolts we sent it away with then became used. So we'd gone to a torque, then a stretch, so we'd used them once. So when I dry built the engine and I wet built the engine, everything measured up fine, and then when I clamped it down, like the breakaway torque was double what I was expecting it to be. It was really, really tight, and if I literally cracked each bolt off, it come down to like 10 Newton meters. So I was shitting myself thinking, oh my god, what is this about? And I hadn't really thought about the bolts at the time. So I took it all back apart, measured everything was fine. The new bolts turned up and I measured everything and it was looser, and my bearing clearance was like ever so slightly larger than the stretched bolts to the new bolts. And It was like, right, okay, this has got like what they're saying, this has got a value to it. And I started again, and it was negligible, but when I did breakaway torque, you could feel it, and that was it. If I hadn't have done breakaway torque, I was like 10 Newton meters over. I think it was like nearly 30, say, and normally I was, what were we the other day, like high teens.
Yeah.
But it was that. It wasn't when it was going, it was what the breakaway torque, it was the pressure applied to get it to start to crack.
Yeah.
And it would go to nearly 30. Then when it was going, it would come down. And yeah, I spoke to a guy, because I was scratching my head. I was like, what is going on? Leave it, spin it over, it'd be fine. Leave it for 20 minutes, come back, and then a breakaway torque would be high again. And I was chatting to the guy who makes all my studs for me, and he goes, oh yeah, it sounds like studs too tight. I'm like, mate, this is OEM bolts. And then he was like, right, okay, crack all the bolts. And it's just little things like that again, you sort of learn the importance of. I don't think it would have done any sort of damage, so to speak, but a tight bearing is obviously gonna wear quicker than a looser bearing, say. But it was interesting how the measurement, the clearance wasn't necessarily any different, but what I thought was happening was, if that's the bearing, my theory was, because obviously your bearing protrudes, and you get what's called crush. This is what stops a bearing from spinning. What keeps the bearing in journal is the contact points between these two. And what I think it was I was over clamping the bearing essentially, and then it was tight here. So I don't think I was necessarily affecting my clearance here and here, because it was negligible when I took it all apart and I mic'd it all up. It was tiny. So I think it was that. I think it was essentially the bearings coming together and then almost starting to sort of pinch out into the crank. So yeah, it is important, and this is where you sort of say your accuracy and your attention to detail is important, because I built loads of engines, and I can take bolts. I can take the old bolts out of the bottom of a V10 or out of a Lambo or whatever and use them, and they're fine. But in that Mercedes, they were massive. They were big old bolts, they're like M14s, and that had an effect. Yeah. Using old ones compared to new ones had a big effect. So yeah, it does affect how your builds come out, so you just have to be careful. Julian Pritchard, Ricky, genuine question. When you fit the girdle and applied the sealant, you then rotated the engine. A small amount of assembly grease came off the end bearing. Would this not affect the torque and therefore the seal? Or was the sealant thicker than the excess assembly grease? Yeah, so I know what you mean there. Where the crank sat in the bearings, I've got assembly lube, and I've rotated the crank. It's obviously going to roll up.
It's a good job you've got a whiteboard in there.
I know. So as I've turned the crank, we do it in purple, although it's red. Yeah, so crank's in the hole, and I've put build lube. Yeah. Yeah. Like that. And what's happened is, as I've turned it, it's like rolled into that area there. So I think that's what he's referring to. Yeah. Obviously, we would try and. My main worry is always to not let it run into the bolt holes, because you can hydraulic the bottom of the bolt hole. Yeah. But a little bit in there, to be fair, I'm not too worried about, because when I pull the crankcase down anyway, I've got all that excess that's going to go everywhere. It won't affect my sealant, because from a bird's eye view, it isn't quite like this. Yeah, but you get. It's not accurate. You get 1, 2, 3, 4. There your bolt holes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's where your crank sits. So there your journals. We don't put any sealant in this area. Our sealant goes like essentially like that.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm not getting any sealant near the journals or the bolt holes, and that build lube will just squeeze out. So that's never really a worry there. The only thing I would worry about is if I had so much excess and I hadn't noted, and it had run down inside bolt holes, because then when I try to screw the stud in, it will just hydraulic out, or the bolt in. It'll hydraulic on the fluid in the bottom of the hole. So
there we go.
There we go. Next. KK18739. Why does the V8 timing chain drive one inlet cam and one exhaust cam on the opposite bank, rather than just driving both inlet cams and having the exhaust cam driven off that, or vice versa? Honestly, no idea. There must be a production value to it, whether that's space or what, but it's not the only engine to do that. There are lots of other engines. You've got to remember the derivative of this is of Nissan, so when you start doing like VR38s and stuff, they do little bits like that where they swap them over. It could be an angle thing, it could be a manufacturing thing. The honest answer is, mate, I don't know. We see so many different engines and so many ways of skinning the same cat that actually, unless you spoke to the designer, you'd never know. Like I said, you can theorise in the same way that if you go back and look at a 1998 S8 V8 engine and you look at a 2023 R8 V10, the philosophy and how they're built is very, very similar. There are subtle differences, but no one's ever really gone, yeah, we'll change all that, we'll do it different. It's always just been a reiteration of of an old way of doing it. So it might be that when that sort of, because I think it was developed out of a V6 Nissan. Loads of people have told me that about McLaren stuff. There's detail there I've missed, But it probably happened one day in a golden age because of a reason, and now it's just, well, that's how we do things, so that's how we do it. In the same way that you go back, 30 years ago, a motorbike engines had a cam chain in the middle. And now every bike engine I could think of pretty much has it on the end.
Yep.
And it's just, things change, and I honestly don't know why it started that way.
It could be quite an interesting thing to look at the origins of some of these engines, and if
Yeah,
you
yeah.
could even talk to some of the guys that worked on them.
It's like, the funny thing is, right, we even had it the other day, is like someone commented going, the R8 engine is a Lambo engine, and the RS6 engine is exactly the same as a 5 litre Gallardo. And we've done this video years back. Do you remember when we compared them all? It's a load of bollocks. So Wikipedia is not a good place to sort of get your research from, and finding people who actually know the story, because a lot of it turns into Chinese whisper.
Yeah.
The Lamborghini never made V10s. They're all Audi engines. That's why you get it and you look at it, it's got Audi badge on it.
Yeah.
L156 gearboxes, which are the gearboxes in all Gallardos and all Gen 1 R8s up until DCTs, made by Graziano, all same gearbox. And the R8 has got a Lambo badge on it. So they're not Lambo this or Lambo that. They're all the S8 V10 engine. It's got a Lambo badge on the back.
Yeah.
But Lambo doesn't use that bore space in. So I don't know, mate. I can't figure it out. One factory makes stuff that goes everywhere. So yeah.
There we go.
Seemed a bit ranty.
I don't think so.
Lots of my stuff seems ranty.
People like a rant, I think, sometimes.
Yeah. Get my soapbox out. Why have I got to get my soapbox out? Oh, Swindon Audi burnt down.
What?
Yeah, Swindon Audi caught fire.
Did it?
Ask me why. Was it a petrol car in a corner that someone was smoking near and the fuel tank exploded? Nope. Electric car on charge.
I drove by that this morning and didn't notice.
Yeah, shut.
I must have had my eyes closed.
Electric cars, they're going to kill us all.
My God.
Yep. 300 grand milk float. What was that? How much is that Tesla truck? That Cybertruck?
It's around $100,000.
Is it that cheap? It can't be that cheap. That must literally be the 4 horsepower version.
Well, when Musk said he was going to announce it years ago, I think it was 2019, he said that the idea was to sell it for $40,000, and it's ended up being $100,000. I think that's the top one. That's what it is, the tri-motor top one.
Joke.
Yeah.
I don't understand it, because at the minute, right, you can spend 15 minutes in a fuel station, fill in a lorry full of diesel and drive for 1,200 miles, and now you can drive for 15 minutes and then they've got to spend 1,200 miles worth of driving time charging your lorry.
I'll drop in the quick vid of the Rimac Nevera at the Carwow shoot and what was needed to power it on the airfield.
What, the big diesel generator pluming smoke?
We have the electric Rimac, 2,000 brake horsepower, 0 to 60 in like 1.7 seconds. Fully electric. And there's what's needed to power it on an airfield. A massive generator. And there's the lorry that came on.
Well, that was Volkswagen at, what car did they took the Pikes Peak, didn't they? Oh yeah, the new green age of racing.
Yeah.
And they've got a Pramac diesel generator on the back of a lorry, pluming black smoke out into the, Colorado sunshine to power an electric car to go up a hill.
There you go.
Joke, mate. Hate electric cars.
Right.
And if anyone has a valid reason to disagree with me, then put it in the comments below. And I do mean valid, because I can't see, and apart from a tax swizz on the business, I can't see any advantage of an electric car over a petrol car.
And let's not get started on ULEZ in London.
What's a les?
The ultra low emission zone that's spread now to Greater London.
Well, I don't. So basically, now what they want is, they want everybody driving electric cars. Oh, don't, because I am literally going to get.
That's a whole
I wonder
new
why
video.
electric is so expensive these days.
Yeah.
Because they're missing out on a tax on fuel. How many? I tell you what, right? How many people in the last 5 years? How much car sales has shifted towards towards electric versus internal combustion, and how many litres of fuel is that equal to? That is a question.
That is a question.
Considering we pay what, 60-70 pence per litre is tax on fuel.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you sit in an engine room all day long on your own. You start coming up with all these crazy conspiracies. Seriously.
Yeah.
It's like Santa was never red, that's Coca-Cola, it used to be green. Well, I do prefer them in red.
Yes.
Santa looks hot in red. What more do you want me to say? Mate.
I think we're done.
Electric cars ain't for me.
Yeah.
No, would rather have Ryan's diesel Panamera.
There we go.
Yeah.
So, final shout out then. The merch is available.
It is, it's on a web shop. The hoodies ain't here, the hats ain't here yet, waiting on them. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Nice.
I need tea now.
Let's do it.
Calm myself down a little bit.
Yes.
About my electric car rant. Someone tell me I'm wrong. I must be missing the end game. If I'm missing the end game, please tell me. Because the only way you can charge a Tesla now is like overnight on a 13-pin plug. So a supercharger, you need a 30 amp main, because there's one here for the body shop. So no house can support that, right? Don't even get me started. Valid arguments, right? Like flat earth style arguments. Why electric's better than petrol?
Bring it on.
Yeah, because I'm sorry, no electric car sounds better than a 250 GTO. No. Or 97, what was it? What was the Mazda? 997B
or whatever it was. That thing's
yeah.
insane.
Yeah, electric cars sound better. Anyway. Although to be fair to Elon Musk, didn't he just land his rocket?
Been to bottom the moon. We followed Mr. Spoon.
I think he landed his rocket, which is quite cool. I like that, so I'll take the craziness. But... Right, smash buttons. Tell me why electric cars are cool. I still won't believe you. And we'll see you at Podium on Wednesday.
We'll do.
Laters.
Later, dude.